Hello la. This video is about two exhibits on display at the Gran Museo del Mundo Maya, and also the suggestion that there are resemblances between Maya and Buddhist cultures, and a color presentation of Atlantean figures. One of the exhibits in the Maya Museum has two books. The first book is called Incidents of Travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan, En Busca de los Mayas, written in 1843 by John L. Stevens and Frederick Catherwood. In this book, Stevens highlighted a relationship between the Egyptians and Maya, and it is still considered a valuable reference tool for contemporary researchers and travelers. The second book is called The American Egypt by Channing Arnold and Frederick J. Tabor Frost, and it was written in 1909. And the museum placard says that the title of this book emphasizes the false claim of the relationship between Egyptians and the Maya. I wanted to find out why the Maya and Egyptians were not related, because at first glance it does seem coincidental that they both built pyramids. So I found American Egypt first, and this book did not disappoint. He starts with his arrival in the Yucatan, which I think for anyone who has ever been to Mérida, Mexico, especially in the summer, is an experience to remember. He discusses the culture, people, and places, and then moves into the history of the conquest of the Mexica Aztec by recounting the footsteps of Cortez during the conquest. He later discusses some of the important sites like Copan and Palenque, and presents theories on the Maya people, their architecture, and hieroglyphics. Finally, the slavery on the hacienda leads into the conditions for the Maya and the wealth of the Yucatan from the Heineken crop. So here we have a couple excerpts from the book. The first, where we're introduced to the Atlantean figures and the list of reasons why Egypt and the Maya are not related. Egypt has been a great temptation to many, and in truth, it is difficult when you are first face to face with such very Egyptian-looking statues as the Atlantean figures, which we found at Chichén, to resist the thought that there must be some connection between the stone marbles of the Nile Valley and the palaces of Yucatan. But putting aside the extraordinary difficulties in the way of mapping a possible route by which the connection between the two peoples could be effected, all available evidence is against you. The buildings of the two races are unlike in structure and design, in ornamentation and decoration, and if this dissimilarity could be explained away, and then an attempt made to link the two ethnically, there is not a shred of evidence physically, mythologically, philologically, or such as might be derived from a community of manners and customs to help out the effort. Whew. All right. So in order to put the Egypt theory finally to rest, he used one of the previous visitors to the Yucatan, Dr. Augustus Le Plongeon, as an example of how preposterous the idea was in this second excerpt. The most remarkable of all theories was that advanced by Dr. Le Plongeon, who invited the world to believe that the Mayans, or Mayaks, as he insisted upon calling them, were the first of all races in the world to become architects, and that they taught the art to the ancient Egyptians and everybody else. In pursuance of this perfectly lunatic suggestion, he dated the civilization of Central America 11,500 years back. This preposterous proposition was received with the Homeric laughter it so richly deserved. So after discarding the idea that there was some relationship to Egypt, he moves on to propose his own theory. Spoiler alert, he thinks America's first architects were Buddhist immigrants. Coincidentally, the Maya Museum has a couple of the Atlantean figures he mentioned. In the museum, the placard does not say by whom or when they were found, but it does say that these anthropomorphic sculptures, known as Atlantean figures based on their resemblances to those from Tula, served to support benches and temples in Chichén Itzá, and it is believed that they represent Bacabs, or deities who hold up the skies. They display Maya iconographic elements with stylistic influences from Central Mexico, as well as variation in costume and ornamentation. These were found earlier by Le Plongeon and Chichén Itzá before American Egypt was written. Yes, this is the same Le Plongeon that he shot on earlier, but you got to admit he had a knack for finding artifacts, and he was the first to take detailed photographs of Chichén Itzá like this one. So let's get back to the museum, because here we have two beautiful examples of the Atlantean statues. And like the placard says, they're related to the statues in Tula, Mexico. Here we can see the statues from Tula, which is a Toltec site in Hidalgo, Mexico, and also the signature Toltec style. The Atlantean statues don't have anything to do with Atlantis. They get their name from Atlas, the Greek figure holding up the globe. But instead of holding something over their heads, these statues have their hands by their sides. They stand 4 meters high and are made of basalt. They have a spear thrower incense and a butterfly-shaped chest plate in the front, and in the back, a plate in the shape of a solar disk. Here in the museum, you can see the butterfly breastplate and the belts are also very similar in both sets of statues. Here we can get a look from the back, the hair on top, and the solar disk mentioned before below. So let's get back to the Buddhism claim made in American Egypt. So here's an altar from the Mesoamerican culture that created the gigantic heads, the Olmecs. In my opinion, this is an obvious example of a cultural connection between the Olmec and Buddhism, because as you can see, we have the same motif in both statues. So, who are the Ganas? In this picture, we have Ganesha in the middle with the elephant head, and he is the leader of the Ganas, surrounded by 4 Ganas. In Maya, they were called Bacabs. The Bacabs were 4 brothers whom God placed when he created the world at the 4 points of it, holding up the sky so that it should not fall. They escaped when the world was destroyed by deluge. So to me, it's pretty similar. It seems we're only missing a Maya god with an elephant snout. So back to the Hindu and Maya. As you can see, the Maya version is more fit. Finally, the Olmec version is the oldest of the 3, suggesting that this idea may have gone from Olmec to Maya. But let's get back to American Egypt and his description of the Bacabs and Chichén Itzá. Standing on the top of the Castillo platform, looking northeastward, one sees shining white amid the trees at the pillars of what is known as the Temple of the Tables, so called in allusions to its chief feature, a series of tables, huge stone slabs supported on Atlantean figures. These latter are of extraordinary interest. They have the square, severe Egyptian headdress and fillet, and so closely resemble in features and general appearance the Sphinx forms of Egyptian mythology that one starts back in amazement on first seeing them. One curious thing, too, is that a close examination shows an extraordinary diversity of feature. Whoever the sculptor was, he was not content with producing a stereotype face, but actually aimed at and obtained a series of which one might reasonably guess to be portraits. So, are these portraits of Maya? Considering the Maya are thought to have developed without any connection from the old world prior to the conquest, that would be interesting. Also, these figures don't look Toltec, so most probably these are not from the Toltec era. So where did these images come from? Well, this information came from a Carnegie Institute report. They did advanced detailed surveys of Maya sites, and I was particularly interested in Chichén Itzá and Mayapan. Their survey was done after Egypt in America was written, so logically, these are some of the same statues being described. So finishing up, the book's title actually was not clickbait because it recognizes the importance of the Maya sites as being at least comparable to Egypt. He also makes a detailed case comparing Maya and Buddhist culture, including practices and architecture, to draw a conclusion that the Maya came to Mexico from Asia. I think he was right about their influence, but definitely wrong about his theory. What he didn't know at the time is that the Olmecs would later be discovered to be much older than the Maya, and the Buddhist influence can be seen in the Olmec as early as 1200 BC. I only looked at one example in this video, but there are many more examples of these so-called coincidences between the Maya and Buddhist cultures. So I'll put it to you. Do you think this is a coincidence or something else? Now, regarding the Atlantean statues, do they portray individuals from different parts of the world? All right, please leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you live in Merida, I encourage you to go to the Merida Museum.